And another thing you're also going to notice is the transition from going from line work to shading. You're going to notice a little bit of difference as far as the reaction of the skin. You're going to get a little more plasma, a little more blood, a little more liquid kind of coming out of the skin, and that's basically because you're going to be working the skin a little more, spending a little more time over the area. You have more needles you're working with, and again, it's repetition. The more time you spend working on an area, the more penetration you're going to get, and the more holes you're going to be poking in the skin. And basically, the more holes you poke, the greater the reactions are going to be. So that's something you notice. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but that's another thing you will notice is a slight increase in the the amount of blood visible on the skin. So when you see that, keep in mind that that is absolutely completely a normal reaction. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Basically, it means you're doing it right. Now I'm going to jump around a little bit to a couple different spots here to give you a better idea of how to utilize the different amounts of shading in accordance with the area you're working with. For example, to break down those 3 different values of gray I was talking about, in a small area it requires a lot less work than, for example, a longer area like the leading edge of the wing or the body, the tail, for example. So when you are using a larger area of skin to work with all that shading, you're obviously going to need to exaggerate each step of black and gray you want to break down. So when you break down those 3 different types of gray shading in an area this big as opposed to something this big, you're going to need to do that the correct amount of ratio. So instead of doing just a tip of black and gray, I'm going to drag that a little further, and I'm going to still leave the extra 3/4 of empty skin there for the rest of my shading. So again, I don't want to utilize too much of the skin with the black and gray. I want to keep it relatively simple, but at the same time, I do want to bring it out far enough to where I'm utilizing the full amount of skin. And that should be about good for that spot right there. Now, as you can see, it's not a very drastic transition, but there is substantially a higher amount of shading involved in that area than that. For example, you have about, say, 3 to 4 times as much shading you want to bring out in that area as opposed to that area. It's subtle, but again, it's those little attention to details that's going to give you a nice clean piece, as opposed to something that appears rushed. It's a good example of a skill tattoo. When you see the ultimate outcome, when you do pay attention to all those little details and take your time and don't rush through it, the outcome will be a nice, clean, skilled tattoo, as opposed to, someone that's just getting started and something that looks rushed. So it's better to take your time, spend that little extra few minutes here and there on each little part, and pay attention to those little details, and that's going to ultimately give you a better, cleaner tattoo, make your clients happier, and show that you actually are capable of doing that and are willing to pay attention to those little detailed spots, and it'll ultimately make you that much better of an artist.